That summer, the air around the lake tasted like sunscreen and secrets. Every year since before I could remember, my family gathered at the Hudson house. 2 stories of peeling white paint and too much history. It used to feel like home. Now it felt like someone else's stage. Vanessa texted me the invite with her usual precision. Barbecue this Saturday. Bring Liam. Don't worry about food, we've got it covered. I stared at the message longer than I should have. The words looked polite, but I could hear the undertone, the same one she'd used since we were kids. This is my territory. I drove down Friday evening, the smell of lake water thick in the air, cicadas already droning their endless argument. Liam sat in the passenger seat, earbuds in, pretending not to notice how tightly I gripped the steering wheel. You okay, Mom? Fine, I said, forcing a smile. Just old memories. He smirked. Translation: Aunt Vanessa. I laughed despite myself. He was right. The house hadn't changed, the wraparound porch, the wooden swing that creaked like it was telling secrets, the faded Hudson Lake retreat sign Dad carved 40 years ago. But the people had. Vanessa met us at the door, perfectly tanned, glass of rose in hand. Her smile was sharp enough to slice a lemon. Claire, you made it, she said, voice too bright. And Liam, look at you. Practically a man now. Hey, Aunt Vanessa. She hugged him like she was claiming him. Then, without missing a beat, you must be exhausted from your long drive. We've already set up everything. I even did your potato salad recipe. Don't worry. I told everyone it was yours. Her tone made it sound like charity. I looked past her into the living room. Same lake view, same antique piano, but everything gleamed now. Polished floors. New art. The kind of renovation that said, I've already decided this is mine. I forced a smile. Looks beautiful, Ness. She tilted her head. Thanks. Mark helped with the paperwork. He's been a lifesaver. Mark, our cousin, family lawyer. The only person who knew the legal details of the house we'd inherited 50-50 after our parents died. I nodded. Good to know. Vanessa's husband, Craig, appeared behind her, tall and sunburned, wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Claire, he said flatly. Good to see you. And you, I replied, matching his tone. Liam nudged me. Should I take the bags? Yes, sweetie. Same room upstairs. Vanessa's voice followed us as we climbed the staircase. Oh, actually, that room's been converted into a walk-in closet. Hope that's okay. You'll be in the small guest room now. Basement level. Liam froze mid-step. The basement. Vanessa laughed. It's cozy. Great for privacy. I smiled without teeth. Perfect. We'll make it work. That night, after everyone went to bed, I wandered out to the porch. The moon hung low over the lake, its reflection trembling like a secret trying to surface. I could still hear Vanessa's laughter from upstairs, the same laugh she used when she got what she wanted. Liam came out quietly. You're doing that breathing thing, he said. What breathing thing? The one where you're pretending not to be mad. I smiled faintly, just remembering something my mother used to say. What's that? When people tell you who they think you are. I said, don't argue. Show them. The barbecue began at noon. Music, laughter, beer bottles clinking. Vanessa played hostess in her perfect linen dress while I manned the grill. Her idea, of course. Claire's always been the cook of the family, she announced. I mean, what else would she do with all that free time? Laughter rippled around the patio. A few guests looked uncomfortable. Most didn't. I felt my cheeks burn, but I kept flipping burgers. I'd learned a long time ago that the quietest person in the room always hears the most. Eleanor, our elderly neighbor, joined me by the grill. Still taking her barbs with grace, I see, she murmured. I smiled. After all these years, it's practically tradition. She chuckled. Your mother once told me Vanessa's mouth would either make her rich or ruin her. I'm still waiting to see which. Before I could answer, Vanessa's voice cut through the crowd. Everyone, she called, clinking her glass. A toast. People turned toward her. I wiped my hands on a towel, uneasy. To family, she said, and to keeping what belongs where it truly belongs. She turned toward me, smiling sweetly. Some of us never quite fit the lake house lifestyle, you know? Nothing personal, Claire. We just bloom differently. The guests laughed nervously. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of humiliation and clarity. She'd wanted this to make me small, to remind everyone that she was the successful one, the rightful heir to a memory. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I smiled, slow, calm, deliberate. "You're right, Vanessa," I said softly. "Some of us bloom differently." I raised my glass. "And some of us prefer not to wilt under pressure." The laughter this time was genuine, but not hers. She blinked, flustered, before forcing another smile. "Well, let's eat." I sat down, my pulse steady now. She just declared war. She didn't realize I'd already chosen my weapon, because that night, after everyone left, I'd be making a call to Mark. And this time, the family lawyer wouldn't be on her side. That night, after everyone left and the lights on the dock dimmed to amber, I slipped onto the porch with my phone. The crickets were deafening. It made my voice sound smaller when I said, "Hey Mark, it's Claire." He hesitated before answering. "Didn't think I'd hear from you this weekend. You free tomorrow morning?" "Depends. Does this have to do with your sister's annual coronation?" I smiled despite myself. "Something like that. Bring the paperwork from the estate if you can." He exhaled softly. "Understood." I hung up, staring at the lake. The water reflected the house's golden light, calm, deceitful. That's the thing about lakes. They hide everything they keep. By breakfast, Vanessa was already performing perfection. Pancakes in an expensive dish, curated music, a linen napkin folded like origami. "Sleep well in the basement suite?" she asked, not looking up. "It was fine," I said. "Cooler than I expected." "I imagined so," she said, sipping coffee. "Dad always said you preferred to stay low." Liam glanced between us, jaw tight. "Mom," he said quietly, "you sure you don't want to go somewhere today? Maybe town." "I've got a few errands," I said, keeping my tone even. "But thanks." Vanessa tilted her head. "Errands? You're on vacation." I smiled. Some vacations need a little paperwork. For the first time she blinked, a quick, involuntary flicker of discomfort. It was subtle, but I caught it. Mark arrived late morning, his sedan crunching over the gravel driveway. He stepped out wearing the same unshakable calm he'd had since law school. "Still the same house," he said. "Almost," I replied. "Except for the queen who thinks she owns it." He smirked. Vanessa never met a boundary she couldn't redecorate. We sat on the porch swing, the air thick with humidity and unspoken truth. "I found something," he said, pulling out a folded envelope. "Your parents' last amendment to the will. Never filed officially because your mother wanted to review it. She passed before she did." "What's in it?" He handed me the copy. "Clause regarding shared inheritance. If either sister attempts to sell or transfer ownership without consent, the other automatically receives majority ownership through trust." I stared at the page. "You're kidding." "No. It was designed to force cooperation. Your mother believed it would keep you too close." I laughed, short and bitter. Mom underestimated Vanessa's creativity. Mark leaned forward. "Have you noticed any changes to the deed? Or unauthorized renovations?" "She remodeled half the place," I said. "Even added a new dock." He nodded. "That's your leverage. If she used estate funds or adjusted property lines without disclosure, she's in violation." "And what happens then?" "Then," he said, "you own the house." That afternoon I visited Eleanor. She was sitting on her porch with lemonade and an old law book open on her lap. "You always knew how to time an emotional earthquake," she said as I sat beside her. "I need your honesty," I said. "Did my parents ever talk to you about the will?" She pursed her lips. "Your mother once. She told me she was afraid love wouldn't keep you two together, so she tried to use rules instead. You can imagine how I felt about that as a judge." I nodded slowly. "She thought she was protecting us." "She was," Eleanor said. "But protection can turn into punishment if no one's left to explain it." The wind carried the sound of laughter from across the lake. Vanessa, hosting guests again like the house was hers alone. Eleanor followed my gaze. "You know, I used to think your sister envied your calm. But I was wrong." "What then?" "She envies your conscience. You can sleep at night, Claire. She can't." That evening, dinner felt like theater. Vanessa had invited 3 couples from the Lake Association, eager to show off her renovated property. The table sparkled with candles, cutlery, and self-importance. "Claire," she said sweetly, "Mark told me you called him. Anything urgent?" "Just clarifying a few things," I said, slicing my chicken. "Oh," she said, feigning curiosity. "Like what?" "The terms of ownership," I said evenly. "You've made some impressive changes." Her smile faltered. "I didn't think I needed permission to improve our family home." "You didn't," I said. "But you did need disclosure. Renovations that alter property value require co-owner consent." The table went quiet. Her husband shifted uncomfortably. "Vanessa." She cut him off. "Claire, this is ridiculous. You've always been jealous." "Actually," I interrupted, meeting her gaze, "I've always been patient. There's a difference." I watched the color rise in her cheeks. Mark cleared his throat gently. "It's just business, Vanessa. Nothing personal." Vanessa forced a laugh. "Business? Right." But I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes. For the first time, she realized the stage wasn't hers anymore. Later that night, I stood by the lake again, the water black under a moonless sky. Liam joined me quietly. "Mom," he said, "are you really gonna fight her?" "No," I said. "I'm going to let her fight herself." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I smiled faintly. "Sometimes justice doesn't need a judge. Just a guest list." The next morning, I sent out the invitations. Saturday, family barbecue. Bring whoever you like. And one special envelope, hand-delivered to Mark. Be there at 2 p.m. Bring the file. Because this time, when Vanessa tried to embarrass me, I wanted witnesses. By Friday morning, the air over the lake had that heavy sweetness that comes before a storm. I woke early and brewed coffee, letting the smell fill the kitchen. It reminded me of Mom, her calm before every family gathering, the way she hummed to herself as though control could be found in small routines. Vanessa was already awake, of course. Her voice carried from the deck, giving orders, rearranging tables, instructing the caterers she'd generously hired. "Claire, I hope you don't mind," she said when I joined her outside. "But I went ahead and upgraded a few things for tomorrow. A real barbecue deserves presentation." "Of course," I said lightly. "You've always been great at presentation." She smirked, not catching the edge. "Well, someone has to make sure things look good for guests. You've invited a few of your friends, I hear." "Just family," I said, sipping coffee. "And a lawyer." Her expression froze for half a second. "A lawyer?" "Mark's coming," I said. "He never misses a good burger." She forced a laugh. "Of course. Family." But her hand tightened around her glass. By noon, Liam and I were cleaning the basement guest suite. He found a box wedged behind the old water heater. "Mom, look at this." Inside were file folders, property estimates, invoices, and one document stamped preliminary sale agreement. Vanessa Reed, seller. Hudson Lake Estate. 50% ownership listed as to be merged upon transfer. "Mom," Liam whispered. "She tried to sell it?" My pulse steadied into something sharper. "She didn't try," I said. "She's preparing to." "And without telling you?" "Exactly." I closed the box and set it on the desk. "We'll keep this between us for now." Liam hesitated. "You're not mad?" "Oh, I'm furious," I said, smiling faintly. "I'm just saving it for tomorrow." That evening, the sun slipped behind a bank of clouds, the light turning a dull gold. Eleanor stopped by with a peach pie and that knowing look she always carried like a secret. "Heard you're hosting," she said. "How's Vanessa handling that reversal of power?" "She thinks it's still her event." Eleanor chuckled. "Good. People like her only learn when the spotlight burns a little." I hesitated. "You think I'm doing the right thing?" She set the pie on the counter, studying me. "Your mother raised you to believe peace meant silence. But peace isn't quiet, Claire, it's clean. You're just washing the dirt off." Her words stayed with me long after she left. The next morning, the sky cleared. Sunlight spilled across the lake like forgiveness waiting to be earned. The smell of charcoal and rosemary drifted through the air as guests arrived, neighbors, cousins, even a few from town. Vanessa glided between them in her flawless summer dress, every move choreographed. "Claire," she called sweetly across the yard. Did you remember to chill the rose? I did, I said, placing the last tray on the table. I also set a place for Mark. Her smile stiffened. Oh good. Wouldn't want to forget the legal counsel. Mark arrived right on cue, crisp white shirt, calm as ever. He shook Vanessa's hand politely, then turned to me with the faintest nod. The file under his arm said everything I needed to know. Beautiful day, he said. Perfect, I replied. Liam hovered nearby, nervous energy radiating off him. Mom, you sure about this? Yes, I said quietly. Sometimes the truth needs sunlight. Lunch began like every other summer gathering, laughter, music, the illusion of family harmony. The smell of grilled corn and cedar smoke mixed with perfume and pride. Vanessa played hostess flawlessly, handing out drinks and compliments with equal precision. She'd invited the local realtor too, the same one listed in her documents. When I saw her talking to him by the dock, my heart hardened just enough to steady. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance. Because if Vanessa wanted witnesses for my humiliation, I'd make sure she got them, just not in the way she planned. By mid-afternoon, the wind shifted. Clouds gathered over the trees, but no one seemed to notice. Vanessa clinked her glass. Everyone, she called, voice lilting over the music. Before the rain comes, let's have a toast. I met Mark's gaze across the table. He gave a subtle nod. Let's, I said, rising slowly. The crowd quieted. The lake shimmered like it was holding its breath. Vanessa smiled. To family, and to knowing where you belong. She turned toward me, eyes gleaming with that same performative kindness. Some of us spend our lives trying to fit in, and others are just born to it. Claire, you know I love that you still come here every year even though you're more of a city soul. Soft laughter rippled. I raised my glass. And I love that you've always been so confident in ownership. She blinked. What's that supposed to mean? Just that you've managed to remodel, redecorate, and almost sell this place without ever once asking me. The laughter stopped cold. Vanessa's hand trembled slightly. That's absurd. Mark set his file on the table. Actually, it's not. Her eyes widened. Mark, what are you? Clause 4B, he said smoothly, opening the folder. Unauthorized sale or structural modification without co-owner consent results in immediate forfeiture of share. The crowd murmured. Vanessa's face drained of color. You wouldn't dare. I smiled softly. You dared first. Thunder cracked somewhere behind the hills. Thunder rolled again, closer this time. The wind pushed the scent of rain through the porch screens. Plates rattled. Guests froze mid-sip, mid-bite. Mark, Vanessa hissed. I'm your client. He straightened, calm as stone. No, Vanessa. I'm the family's counsel. And right now, the family needs clarity. Her laugh came brittle and high. This is insane. You can't just. Actually, I can. He opened the folder, revealing signed contractor receipts, bank transfers, and the preliminary sale agreement Liam and I had found. Recognize these? Color drained from her face. Where did you? Basement box, I said softly. You really should label your secrets better. Murmurs rippled through the guests. The realtor at the end of the table shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing he was now part of a scandal instead of a sale. Vanessa turned to him desperately. You told me we didn't need her consent until closing. He stammered. I assumed you had power of attorney. You assumed wrong, Mark said. Lightning flashed, a white slice across the lake. For a second the whole yard was illuminated. Faces caught mid-gasp, napkins frozen halfway to mouths, rain trembling on the edge of release. Vanessa slammed her glass down. You always wanted to make me the villain, she snapped at me. You've hated me since we were kids. No, I said quietly. I just stopped volunteering to be your audience. Her voice cracked. You think you're so noble? You left. You ran from this family while I stayed and cleaned up their messes. I left, I said, because I refused to become one. That silence, thick, electric, was louder than the thunder. Eleanor's voice broke it, steady and low. Vanessa, pride is a lonely landlord. It rents everything it touches. Vanessa spun toward her. Stay out of this, Eleanor. Can't, she said, lifting her chin. This house has been my view for 40 years. I watched your parents build it with love, not ego. You've turned it into a mirror, and you can't stop staring. Vanessa's lip trembled. You all act like I'm some monster. No, I said softly. Just a woman who forgot that family isn't ownership. The first fat drops of rain began to fall, tapping against the tablecloth. Guests scattered for the porch, murmuring excuses. The sky finally gave in, pouring. Liam stayed beside me, shoulders squared. Mom. It's okay, I whispered. Let her talk. But Vanessa didn't. She just stood there, drenched, mascara bleeding down her cheeks, breathing hard. You'll regret this, she whispered. You always need me eventually. I needed you, I said. Once. The day Mom died. You never came. Her mouth opened, then closed. She turned and walked toward the dock, heels sinking in the wet grass. Mark watched her go, then looked at me. Want to press the claws? I shook my head slowly. Not yet. Let her sit with silence first. Eleanor smiled faintly. Poetic mercy. Your mother would approve. That night, the storm settled into a steady rain. The guests were gone, the yard littered with overturned chairs and damp napkins. I found Vanessa sitting alone on the dock, shoes off, hair plastered to her face. I stood behind her for a long moment before speaking. It's funny, I said. Mom used to say storms are just the sky remembering how to breathe. She didn't turn. Congratulations, Claire. You won. It's not about winning. Then what is it? She asked, voice raw. It's about stopping the cycle, I said. Someone has to. She let out a shaky laugh. You always talk like you're better than me. No, I said. Just tired. We sat there, listening to the rain slap the lake surface. Somewhere far off, a loon called. A lonely, haunting sound that felt like memory. After a while, she whispered, I didn't mean to sell it behind your back. Not at first. I just needed to prove I could stand on my own. You already could, I said. You just kept trying to do it on a pedestal. Her shoulders shook once, half sob, half bitter laugh. And you? What pedestal are you on now? None, I said. I'm finally standing on the ground. She turned then, eyes red but clearer. So what happens now? Tomorrow, I said. You and Mark will meet. You'll sign a revision. We'll split it legally, cleanly. And maybe next summer, we just send each other a postcard instead of an invitation. She nodded slowly. That might be best. The rain softened. The air smelled like wet cedar and truce. When I came back inside, Liam was waiting by the window. You okay? He asked. Better, I said. You. He shrugged. I kinda liked watching karma in real time. I smiled. You get that from me. Outside, the storm eased into silence. The lake lay smooth again, reflecting the porch light. And for the first time in years, the house didn't feel like hers or mine. Just felt free. The next morning, sunlight returned as if the storm had rinsed the entire lake clean. The grass sparkled, the air sharp with pine and forgiveness. The dock still held damp footprints that would fade by noon. Mark arrived early, portfolio under his arm, wearing that calm expression people mistake for detachment. You slept? He asked. Enough, I said. He smiled. Vanessa's waiting on the porch. She signed. It was done. The revision was simple. Mutual ownership dissolved. Funds divided. No loopholes left for pride to crawl through. Half the house was mine outright. The other half hers to be sold or kept elsewhere. Mark poured coffee and handed me the pen. You sure you don't want to pursue damages? No, I said. She punished herself enough yesterday. He nodded. You did what few people manage. You ended the war without salt in the earth. He left soon after, leaving the quiet behind like a benediction. Vanessa lingered by her car, suitcase already in the trunk. She looked different, less polished, more human. I signed, she said simply. I know. She exhaled. You're really keeping the house? Yes. But not for me. For Liam. He deserves to have one piece of this family that isn't poisoned. She nodded. Maybe you're right. She hesitated, then reached into her purse and handed me something. A faded Polaroid. It was from a summer long ago. The two of us on the swing, Dad grilling in the background, Mom laughing, hair blowing wild in the wind. You kept this? I asked softly. Yeah, she said. I was going to throw it away once. But I didn't. She stepped back, eyes glistening. Goodbye, Claire. Goodbye, Ness. The car rolled down the gravel drive, dust rising in her wake, fading into the sunlight. Eleanor appeared later with her cane and her steady wisdom. So, she said, the storm passed. For now. She smiled. They always do. It's what you build afterward that matters. I looked out at the lake. I used to think justice meant seeing someone pay. And now I think it's seeing yourself stop bleeding. Eleanor tapped her cane. You've got your mother's clarity. I smiled. And my father's stubbornness. Good combination, she said, standing. Just don't waste it. That evening, Liam and I lit the grill again. Not for guests, just us. The lake glowed gold in the dying light. He flipped a burger, grinning. So, we keeping the family tradition? I laughed. Maybe. But from now on, the guest list's smaller. He nodded, serious for a moment. You did good, Mom. I looked at him, at the boy turning into a man under this same roof that once held so much noise. We both did. The sky deepened into pink and lavender, the air cooling. Somewhere, a radio played an old song about coming home. I closed my eyes and listened. For once, belonging didn't feel borrowed. It felt earned. By late August, the lake house had settled back into its rhythm. Porch swing creaking, gulls calling, wind threading through pine needles. I painted the front door soft blue. A clean start. Vanessa sent a letter 2 weeks later. No apology, no venom. Just a single line written in her careful handwriting. You were right. Some of us bloom differently. I read it twice, then tucked it behind the old family photo on the mantel. Some truths don't need to be framed. They just need to be acknowledged. And as I watched Liam skip a stone across the lake, sunlight catching on the ripples, I realized peace doesn't mean the absence of conflict. It means you finally stopped auditioning for it. What did you think of Claire's story? Have you ever had to stand up to family and still choose kindness? Tell me in the comments, rate this story from 0 to 10, and subscribe so you don't miss next week's story, where love and betrayal collide by the sea. Because next time we're heading to Montauk. In the quiet grief of Montauk, a widow learns that the man she buried left behind another life, and the key to unlock it. What she finds will turn loyalty into revelation, and mourning into awakening.